The entire upscale restaurant fell silent, all because a young waitress dared to stand up to the powerful CEO everyone feared. The golden lights of the upscale restaurant shimmered like liquid fire. Crystal glasses chimed faintly. The clinking of knives against porcelain rang sharp like fragile glass shattering in the heavy silence. A piano whispered from the corner, but instead of warmth, it only thickened the suffocating air. Waiters moved swiftly, their hands trembling. Guests bowed their heads, murmuring in hushed tones. No one dared speak above a whisper, because he was here. The camera panned slowly. A man sat at the center of the room, the large table draped in white cloth like a throne. Light spilled across his polished black suit. His crimson tie pulled tight. His eyes were razor sharp. His lips pressed thin, one furrow of his brow enough to make the entire room hold its breath. The powerful CEO. A man whose single word could destroy a career. Then clink. A fork struck the plate, the sound slicing through the room like a blade. His roar shook the walls. This meal is an insult. The restaurant froze. Silverware hung mid-air. In the kitchen, an old chef peeked through the crack in the door face, pale as ash. The manager bowed low, sweat trickling down his temple. But in the corner stood a small figure, straight and steady. The tray in her hands quivered, but her eyes did not. The new waitress. She drew a deep breath, stepped forward, each footfall echoing against the silence. All eyes turned to her. No one could believe it. She stopped by his table, her voice calm, even, and unshaken. Sir, no meal is an insult. But the way you speak to people, that is. The silence fractured, heavy and unbearable. The lights dimmed as though the room itself recoiled, leaving only a spotlight fixed on two faces, one cold with power, the other steady with courage. He lifted his gaze, eyes sharp as blades. The corner of his mouth curled, ready to unleash words everyone in the restaurant dreaded to hear. And the audience held their breath. Would he crush her in an instant? Or for the first time be disarmed by truth spoken with fearless honesty? He was a name whispered in every boardroom, the powerful CEO, respected for his wealth, infamous for his cruelty. Stories swirled through the city like smoke. Employees brought to tears in meetings. Managers humiliated in front of partners. Five-star restaurants nearly ruined by a single scathing remark. People feared him. People despised him. But no one dared to challenge him. His appearance was his armor. A flawless black suit without a single crease. A diamond-studded watch that caught the light with every movement. He sat like an emperor at the center of the room, cold eyes dissecting every detail. A glass slightly off-center. A napkin folded imperfectly. Each one a potential trigger for his wrath. One furrow of his brow, and the entire room bent to silence. And then there was her, the complete opposite. A new waitress, her uniform still a little too loose for her slender frame. Barely in her 20s, her face showed hints of exhaustion, yet her eyes remained clear, her manner unfailingly polite. At home, a sick mother waited for the meager paychecks she carried back each week. Life was merciless, but she carried herself with quiet dignity, with kindness in her words, and integrity in her smallest gestures. The camera split the scene, one frame blazing with light, the CEO beneath a glittering chandelier, the table before him like a throne. The other dim and muted, the waitress by the kitchen door, harsh fluorescent light casting resolve across her eyes. The contrast was undeniable. Arrogant power against fragile resilience. The piano played on soft and suffocating like the quickened breath of someone hiding their fear. Her tray trembled in her hands. Her breath grew heavier, and then she stepped forward. A small act, but enough to make the audience's hearts pound faster. The poor waitress walked straight toward the table of power, toward the man no one dared to approach. She lifted her head, her eyes locked onto his. No flinching, no bowing. Her voice rang clear, slicing through the silence. Sir, people deserve respect, no matter how much money they have. The crowded room faded into nothing. There were only two figures left in the frame, one cloaked in power, the other armed with truth. One man accustomed to obedience, one woman brave enough to speak. The CEO's eyes narrowed, his lips curled into a sharp smile, and no one knew. Would he unleash his fury, or for the first time be shaken by the truth staring back at him? The silver knife clattered against the plate, the sound cracking through the silence like thunder. The CEO leaned forward, his cold eyes sweeping over the dish placed before him. He jerked his chin, his voice slicing the air. Pathetic. Is this what you call fine dining? The crowded restaurant froze. No breath dared to rise above a whisper. Employees stood scattered, shoulders trembling. The manager's face drained of color, his smile stiffening like wax. He bowed low, stammering apologies, each word only thickening the suffocating air. In the kitchen, the old chef peered through the crack in the door. His hand shook around the towel clenched tight. Sweat trickled down his wrinkled brow. This was the dish he had poured his soul into, yet before a single cruel remark it all crumbled to nothing. The camera closed in faces, pale eyes downcast. Guests looked away. Whispers died mid-breath. Only the pounding of hearts remained like war drums inside fragile chests. In the shadows stood a young waitress. Her heart raced not from fear, but from anger. She saw the humiliation in the chef's eyes, the trembling hands of her coworkers, the helpless slump of her manager's shoulders. Her fingers whitened against the tray. She drew in a deep breath. Resolve flickered in her eyes. One step, then another. Her heels struck the floor softly, but in the silence they thundered like a storm. The restaurant held its breath, watching the impossible unfold. She stopped beside his table, her back straight, her gaze steady locked on the man who sat like a king on his throne. Her voice rang out sharp and unyielding. "Sir, this is not how you treat people. Not here. Not anywhere." The words fell heavy like stone. The room collapsed into silence. Music swelled, then cut to nothing, leaving a suffocating pause. A spotlight unseen seemed to narrow on just two figures, the arrogant CEO and the fragile waitress who dared defy him. His head snapped up, eyes razor sharp, pinning her in place. His face shifted shock, then fury. The audience held its breath. Would he crush her in an instant? Or for the first time face a challenge he could not command? She set the tray down on the nearby table. The clash of metal against wood rang out dry, sharp, unforgiving. Slow motion. Everyone saw her hand tremble, but her eyes did not. The room froze. Forks hovered midair, breaths caught and held. Every gaze locked on the small waitress in her plain uniform. She took one more step. The golden chandelier light spilled down, forming a circle around her. The hall dimmed into shadow, leaving only two figures in the frame. One seated cloaked in authority. One standing tall, eyes burning like a small but unyielding flame. Her voice cut through the weight of silence, slow, steady, each word landing like a hammer strike. "Sir, respect is not reserved for the rich. Everyone here deserves it." A deadly pause followed. The music snapped off. Only the pounding of hearts remained. Thump, thump, as if the entire room shared the same heartbeat. The CEO froze. His eyes widened, disbelief flashing across his face. How long had it been since anyone dared speak to him like this, since anyone dared to look him straight in the eye? Close up. His jaw clenched, his hand tightening around the wine glass until his knuckles turned white. The audience held their breath, convinced a single flick of his hand would crush her then and there. But she didn't flinch. Her gaze held firm. No contempt, no fear. Only resolve, the courage of someone who believes in what is right. Whispers stirred, then died quickly. Everyone understood. They were witnessing something unprecedented. A fragile waitress standing against a ruthless CEO. The restaurant became an arena. No swords, no shouting, just eyes locked in battle. Just one truth spoken aloud. The air stretched taut like a drawn string ready to snap at the smallest movement. The camera drifted slowly from her face to his. A flicker of flame confronting a looming storm. A spark daring to challenge the darkness. The CEO stayed silent. Time dragged into eternity. The audience leaned forward breathless. Would he explode and crush her courage? Or for the first time would power bow to a simple, undeniable truth? 1 second, 2 seconds, 3. No roar, no storm unleashed as everyone expected. Only silence. The CEO leaned back into his chair. The wine glass still clenched in his hand, but his lips withheld their usual cruelty. His eyes locked onto the waitress, unsteady, uncertain. For the first time in years, someone had spoken to him without fear, without flattery. The packed dining hall stood frozen. Patrons held their breath until whispers began to ripple through the air. Every gaze waited for the explosion. But instead came a short, strange command. "Bring me a fresh cup." No shouting, no venom, just curt, direct, and softer than anyone had ever heard. The waitress nodded, turned, and walked away. Her steps were light but steady. Behind her, the entire restaurant exhaled as though they had all just survived a storm. Wide shot. The dining room slowly brightened. Golden light returned to warmth. Guests leaned toward one another, whispering, smiling in disbelief. The piano shifted tone gentler now, like a long sigh released. That day ended without tears, without insults, only a new cup placed quietly on the table. But in the days that followed, something strange happened. The CEO kept coming, kept sitting in his usual seat, still scrutinizing every detail. Yet the shouting grew rare, the cruelty thinner. Until one morning he nodded to a server and said, "Good job." No one believed their ears. Another time he left a tip, not from guilt but as a silent acknowledgement. Close up, a fleeting smile on a server's face. The bright eyes of the old chef and the young waitress, the only one who dared stand against the storm, working quietly, as if nothing had happened. No words were spoken, but everyone knew change had begun, all from a single moment of courage. Yet one question still lingered in the air. Was this only temporary? Or had a hardened heart finally cracked just enough for the light to slip in? In the days that followed, the waitress kept coming to work as always. The same simple uniform, the same tray in her hands, weaving between tables. Nothing about her changed, no pride, no boasting. Only kindness repeated each day like a habit written into her very blood. But to her coworkers, she was no longer the timid new hire. In their eyes, she had become a silent hero, the one who dared to say what everyone thought, yet no one else had the courage to voice. The CEO still sat at his familiar table, still immaculate in his suit, still sharp-eyed. But something was different. The outbursts grew rare. The cruelty faded. Silence settled in its place, sometimes broken by a quiet nod, or on occasion the unexpected gesture of a tip. He never said the words "I'm sorry," but his actions spoke a quiet apology all the same. The camera drifted slowly across the restaurant. The heavy air was gone. Golden light washed over the tables, customers laughing easily now. Silverware chimed in rhythm, no longer trembling. In the kitchen, the old chef allowed himself a relieved smile. The younger staff whispered to each other, lips curved with subtle grins. At the center of the frame, the waitress carried her tray with calm grace, greeting guests with the same soft smile. No one spoke of that day, but everyone remembered. A voiceover rose, gentle yet steady. Respect is a two-way street. That day, one waitress reminded us all. The piano swelled warm, hopeful, as the camera pulled back, revealing the restaurant bathed in light filled with laughter, and a peace long forgotten now reclaimed. And as the screen lingered, a question echoed in every heart. How many times in life could a single honest word, a single act of courage, change not just one person, but an entire world around them? The camera slowly pulled back from the glowing restaurant. The clinking of silverware and the gentle hum of laughter faded into silence. The golden light dissolved, giving way to a plain white backdrop. At the center of the screen, words appeared clear and deliberate, etched into the viewer's mind like a lasting reminder. A voiceover resonated deep and steady, carrying the echo of tension just past. This story reminds us that courage and dignity can transform an entire room. Sometimes one honest word, one brave act, is enough to make a difference. Have you ever witnessed someone daring to stand up for what's right? A brief pause. Only the soft notes of a piano remained warm, lingering, drawing the audience into the silence. Their hearts beat a little faster, as if they too were standing in that room under the gaze of power, asking themselves, would I have the courage to speak the truth? Text appeared one line at a time. Share your thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, so stories like this can reach even more hearts. The screen slowly faded to white. The channel logo emerged, simple, luminous, unmistakable. The music softened, each piano note echoing gently before fading away. Black screen. But in the hearts of the viewers, one question lingered. If tomorrow you stood before power used wrongly, would you stay silent or dare to speak what's right?